Good morning, everybody. The time is 10 o'clock, and I call the September 28th, 2023 Planning Board meeting to order. We are joined today by our Vice Chair Bailey. We are also joined by Commissioners Washington, Giraldo, and Dorner.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I am Chair Shapiro. And moving forward to the business at hand, please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with a link provided in the email or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. You can see all of this in front of you on the screen. If you wish to speak or become person of record, you may use our online web form, which is also referenced on the screen. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our senior counsel, Lisa Coleman. We have Jessica Jones, our planning board administrator, Rhonda Ford, technical hearing writer, and Derek Erlage, the deputy planning director, is on, as well as James Hunt, our division chief for the development review division. We're also joined by our staff members, Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Crowner, helping with technology behind the scenes. So we will move on to our administrative items. First item will be the draft minutes of the September 21, 2023 Planning Board meeting. I would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Again, this is for the draft minutes of the September 21, 2023 meeting. If there's no discussion, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner. Do we have you, Will? Maybe you have a technical. Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye. There is I keep hearing an echo though. Something when I heard with Vice Chair Bailey and with Commissioner Washington. When they spoke,
I hear it as well, Commissioner Giraldo.
So something.
Kenny, Ryan, anything you can do from your side? Or is it our individual issues, or what do you think's going on?
Chair, I'll go speak with them real quick if you all want to proceed.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I called the roll. Did I just call the roll? I did call the roll.
Yes.
Okay.
You did.
And I vote aye just in case. I don't remember if I voted. So the ayes have it 5-0. Next administrative item that we have is says a supplemental item, legislative work session, CB 86 2023. We have Ms. Hightower who's going to give a presentation on this. Ms. Hightower, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Chairman Shapiro. Good morning, members of the Planning Board. For the record, Raina Hightower. I'd like to present to you today CB 86 2023 and CR 81 2023. CB 86 2023 removes the county council's ability to waive public safety facilities mitigation requirements for police, fire, and rescue adequacy during subdivision review. Currently, after approval of a council resolution, a development project can be exempted from providing equipment, building facilities, or payment of a mitigation fee. CB 86 2023 does not address how prior approved waivers will be handled. Will they still be effective? Staff recommends that the district council make clear through this bill or through a council resolution whether prior approved waivers will remain in effect. Planning board members, this bill was discussed on Tuesday during the PHED committee meeting and was voted out of committee favorably 5-0 without amendments. But staff still believes it is important to clarify through the bill or in a resolution whether prior waivers will remain in effect. Staff recommends that the planning board vote to support CB 86 2023 with an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. And commissioners, for what it's worth, I've had the opportunity to discuss this with staff, and I'm comfortable with this, with the staff's recommendations, of course. I we've thought through, are there any unintended consequences from this? And there are not, that we can see. So we're comfortable. I'm comfortable moving forward, but I'm open to any questions or concerns you may have. Okay, all right, next one, Ms. Hightower.
CR 81 creates an 11-member implementation and infrastructure task force to examine the implementation strategies within Plan 2035. Chairman Shapiro must designate 2 planning department staff members to serve on the task force. The task force will recommend to the county council how to best reconcile development policies and regulations within the general plan to limit sprawl and development outside of transit-oriented areas and in local centers. The task force will also address climate goals and infrastructure deficiencies in the county. Staff believes establishing the task force is an excellent opportunity to evaluate and adjust the vision of Plan 2035. Staff supports the creation of this task force and looks forward to assisting the county council in the task force. Staff recommends that the planning board vote to support CR 81 2023.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Hightower or other staff? If there are none, then I would look for a motion to approve staff's recommendation for, we'll take it as one motion, support CB 86 with amendment as recommended by staff, and CB 81 is to approve the staff recommendation to support. Look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation of staff and approve CB 86 2023 and support with amendment, as well as supporting CR-81-2023.
Second.
I just want to make sure, because my notes are different. There's a motion and a second under discussion. 81 is a resolution, so it's CR 81, as Commissioner Washington said. Correct, Ms. Hightower?
Yes, Chairman.
It's a resolution.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
I didn't catch who seconded the motion.
Deputy Chair.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Okay. Madam Vice Chair, your vote.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Next, also under administrative items, we have item 3C. This is the corporate budget office will give us the FY25 budget outlook. We'll have Katie Knopke who will give you the staff presentation, and we will turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. There's a PowerPoint that goes with it. Yes, there we go. In the meantime, I'm Katie Knopke, Acting Corporate Budget Director, and I'm here to give an overview of our FY25 assumptions moving into our budget development process and give everyone a look into our projections over the next 6 years. All right, we can go to the next slide. So we're going to start off with some key trends over the past few years, move into our assumptions for FY25, and then look at the next 6 years. Okay, next slide. So this chart here shows the growth in the accessible base, which is based off of real property. The county produces these numbers every March and every November. So the most up-to-date numbers are the March numbers. And as you can see, it continues to grow each year. And we will have updated numbers in November. Next slide. Okay. All right, so in conjunction with that, our tax rate has not increased, but as you can see, the revenue has increased because of the growth of the accessible base. This chart here shows our estimate of FY23 and what we have budgeted for FY24. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's a summary of our expenditures for each one of the funds. The spikes include transfers to Largo and an increase in CIP PAYGO in FY23. So as you can see, it's varied over the years. Next slide. This shows our increase or decrease in some years to our compensation or personnel costs. This fluctuates quite a bit. As you see, some years it's gone down. In 23, it increased quite a bit. And right now, for all of these, we're working on assumptions we have right now, but they will be finalized by the time we present to you in November. Next slide. This shows a summary of the project charges. As you can see, between 2013 and the almost following 10 years, they've decreased. However, in FY24, the County Council added $4.4 million in one-time charges. And next slide. This chart shows the use of fund balance within each of the funds. The big spikes are transfers to Largo, and but as you can see in some of the funds, we do budget to use fund balance. So next slide. So similar to the first couple slides, this shows the growth, the increase in revenue just by the growth of the assessable base. So in the administration fund, we're projecting an increase of about 1.9 million in revenue. In the park fund, 5.1 million, and then in the rec fund, 2.7. And then of course, this will be updated and these numbers will change when we get the numbers, when the numbers are released in November. Next slide. So right now we're going to go into some of the assumptions we're using to build the FY25 budget. Go on to the next one. The first one is our employee health and other benefits. Right now we're estimating an increase of 7.98. And this shows the dollar value of that increase in each one of the funds. There is a chance this will change if it's possible we're still negotiating with some of the healthcare providers. But right now, these are our current estimates. Next slide. So for other post-employment benefits, we are actually using the most recent numbers we have, which are from November of 2022. We will get updated numbers for these in November. So when we present to you at that time, we'll have the updated estimates, but currently this is our most recent estimate and it's showing a 4.5% increase. Next slide. Similarly for retirement, we're using the most recent numbers we have, which are from November 2022, and those will be updated again. This is likely going to increase, but this is what we're looking at right now as the base increase. So next slide. This chart shows all of the compensation increases that are going to be recognized in FY24, and then it builds them into the FY25 budget. So going into FY25, we're going to be starting out with about 11.3 million an increase in compensation. So this includes FY24 COLA and merits, also reclassification increases. This does not include any new position requests, nor does it include any FY25 increases. Next slide. So some things to consider when we're building this is our negotiations. So we currently in FY25 have a wage and benefits reopener with the FOP and full contract negotiations with McGeo. For FY24, that's flipped. So we're recommending continuing to do the same thing we've done in prior years, where we put the compensation dollar marker within each fund and then spread it out when when it is adopted. Next slide. This chart talks about CIP. We are still finalizing a lot of these numbers. For the operating budget impacts, those will be updated. For debt service, we're looking at 61.5 million in new bond issue. However, that number that's plugged in there is, I'm still working with finance to get that final expense. And then the CIP is an adjustment for the assumptions we have over the next several years. And that will likely change, but this is just a snapshot of what assumptions we're using at the moment. Next slide. And this is just a summary of everything I've gone through. It shows the increase above FY24 for each of these components in each of the funds. Next slide. Oh, go back one, if you could.
Go back one.
Thank you. Okay, so this chart shows our estimate currently of the growth. So on the left-hand side, it shows the growth of revenue, which we talked about. Actually, we talked about both of these, but it shows right now that the expenditures are growing at a higher rate than the expenses. And then on the right, that shows that impacts within the fund balance. So right now, the projections do show more revenue compared to expenses. So that's why the fund balance is going up. But if that will be, even though the growth is less, the assumptions show that it's more than the expenses. So that's why that makes sense. So of course, these expenses will be adjusted as we tighten up our numbers. Next slide. With the park fund here, we're showing just a slight increase that will be adjusted. You can see on the right, the historical fund balance. We dipped into that over the past, over the recent years for transfers to Largo. But at the moment in FY25, it's projected to be at 73 million. Next slide. And similar, well, in this case, for the rec fund right now, the total expenditures in our model are showing a slight decrease. And similarly, you can see the use of fund balance in prior years, but with 52.8 million projected in fund balance. Oh, that should be 25 on the bottom. Next slide. So this chart is for the administration fund. It shows the percentage of increase for the total expenditures compared to the percentage of increase for the fund or for property taxes in the top chart. It reflects what we saw in the prior slides, that increases are growing at a greater rate than the current assessable base. And as you can see, fund balance is slowly decreasing, but there's still 45 million remaining in the administration fund, or projected 45 million remaining through FY30. Next slide. So for the park fund, the top part tells a similar story with related to revenue and expenditures. However, I want to highlight in FY30, we're showing a decrease within the fund balance, and we're showing a deficit of about 2.6 million in FY30. There are a few things we can do for this. One is to lower expenses by that amount. We could transfer certain expenses over to the recreation fund. We could also transfer expenses over to the Largo headquarters fund. But staff will be looking at all of these scenarios as we go through the course of the budget development process. Next slide. Might be for, oh, okay. So here we go. Similar for the rec fund. However, there's a larger, or at the end, or by the time we get to FY30, we're seeing about 30 million in fund balance. Next slide. Might be a delay on my end. Okay, so we've already had some adjustments to the budget timeline since we published this slide or this package. Right now we're on the second listing for the budget overview. We have our first public budget forum next week. We have the second public budget forum on the 17th. The planning board initial budget estimate presentation is now going to be on October 19th instead of the 26th. And then the November presentation is now going to be on November 30th. We will be meeting with the spending affordability around the same time, probably early December. And then we will present the entire proposed budget to the commission in December. And once that is approved, we will package that up and then submit to the county executive and county council by January 15th. So, next slide. So the following slides, we don't need to go through them. They're just for reference. They have more of a detailed, they go into more detail of how we put together the numbers for 25 through 30. But I'm happy to take, that's the end of my presentation, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Knappe. We'll turn to commissioners for questions. I have a few quick thoughts as well, but let me turn it over to you all first if there's any thoughts, reactions, questions that you all have for this first look. This is the budget, first budget outline presentation. Okay. The only thing I would say is this issue around project charges and the escalating project charges we're very mindful of. We're in conversation with the council, especially the council leadership, and in conversation with the county executive and their folks as well to find a way to rein this in, because this is certainly not a trend that we want to see. We were moving in the right trajectory for a long time. So, and then the other thing is the longer term issue with the FY30 dip and with the park fund has a deficit. That's obviously something that we're very mindful of. We've got a long time without a tax increase, and we plan to go a fair bit longer. So we want to figure out what we can do so that FY30 number, the park fund, does not look the same way. And those are the two things that I wanted to flag for you all. Any other questions for staff with this preliminary look? None. Ms. Knappe, you did an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, commissioners, there's no action needed on this, so we'll move on to our next items. And next we have our consent agenda, items 4A, B, and D. Anyone who wishes to oppose staff's recommendations on these items, or any board member who wishes to discuss any? If not, I would look for a motion. You're on mute, Commissioner Washington.
I was telling Madam Vice Chair she was on mute.
All right, let's start again. I move adoption of the staff findings and options and approval of the items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
I'll second it. Item 4A.
We got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion? None. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Items 4A and 4B, vote aye.
Aye,
and D.
include D as well. A, B, and D, is that right?
D,
And
A,
D,
B, and D.
Yeah.
right.
That's an aye from Vice Chair Bailey. Commissioner Washington.
Aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Good, and I'm back in business. While we were waiting, the delivery person happened to walk up with my power cord.
There we
So
go.
Ah,
no cell
That's
phone.
efficient. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. So next we'll move on to our regular agenda items. We will start with item 5A. I'm sorry, item 5. This is SDP 9612H2 Bellhaven Estates, Lot 60, Block A. This is going to be heard before item 6. These are linked items. This is an evidentiary hearing. I don't expect that we'll have anyone testifying, but if we do, I'll swear whoever needs to testify in at that time. And we will start with the staff presentation. Ms. Bynum.
Good morning. Can you all hear? Okay. Good morning, Mr. You can. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Angel Bynum with the Urban Design Section. This is item 5, SDP 9612H2 for Bellhaven Estates, Lot 60, Block A, requesting approval of a homeowner's minor amendment to construct a 20-foot by 20-foot elevated screen porch addition at the rear of the existing single-family attached dwelling within the rear yard setback. The proposed elevated addition will encroach into the rear yard setback, and therefore the applicant is seeking relief from the required 20-foot rear yard setback to be reduced by 10 feet for a 10-foot rear yard setback. This application is supported by staff, the applicant, and their homeowners association, and has been reviewed and evaluated in accordance with the prior zoning ordinance. Based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommends that the planning board approve specific design plan 9612-H2 for Bellhaven Estates, Lot 60, Block A. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bynum. Commissioners, any questions for staff on this item? None. Again, this is a public hearing. I don't think we have anyone signed up to speak. In which case we will close the public hearing, and commissioners, unless there's any deliberation, I would look for a motion.
I thought I saw a Mr. Rowe's hand go up. Looks like he's raising his hand. I'm not sure if he's ready. Who that might be.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that. You want to speak on this item?
He's muted.
Yep, be sure to unmute yourself. Can't hear you. We're waiting for you, or are you still trying to unmute? Okay. Is it Mr. Roque or Mr. Morales? Which is it?
This is Mr. Rowe.
So let me suggest to you, we can't hear you, but I think if I can read the tea leaves here, we're about to vote favorably on this item. So if you're okay, give me a thumbs up and we'll just go ahead and vote. How's that? Okay, good. So commissioners, we got the thumbs up. I'm not going to consider that as testimony that I needed to swear in for, so we'll close the public hearing. And if there's no deliberation, I will look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve SDP-9612-H2.
Second.
You got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. And then we have the companion item, item 6. This is the draft resolution, PGCPB number 2023-101, SDP 9612-H2, Bellhaven Estates, Lot 60, Block A. Ms. Bynum, you have anything to give us on this one?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. There's no staff presentation. There's nobody representing the applicant here. Mr. Carlos, you got a thumbs up for us? That's a thumbs up. We got the necessary thumbs up on that one. And
This is a first.
I move to approve the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Second,
Thank you.
Is that a thumbs
We got a
up?
motion to
Is
second.
that a
to
thumbs
approve
up?
the
thumbs up.
resolution. Got a thumbs up as well. I don't know how that's reflected in the staff report, but we'll run with it. We got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey,
Thumbs up. I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
Hands up, I vote aye.
You got 5 votes on that one. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank
And
you.
final thank you as well.
Have a good one.
Next item on our agenda is item 7. This is Countywide Planning Division. This is mandatory referral 2118F, Canning Solar. We don't have anyone representing the applicant speaking to us or expected to speak for us. There are folks here, but I don't have it on my list. And we have a staff presentation by Ms. Osei. The floor is yours. Take it away. I'm sorry, let me just read one thing into the record, just so we have this, because I want to make sure that as we go through these mandatory referrals, the public is clear with what we're working with. So per state law and the planning board's mandatory referral guidelines, privately owned public utility projects such as community solar projects are not subject to local zoning. Rather, the planning board reviews and comments on these projects through the mandatory referral process. So the mandatory referral process is also an opportunity for the public to provide input if they choose. So with that, I'll turn to staff for a presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the board. I'm Christine Osei, Countywide Planning Division. Item 7 is a proposed Canning Solar Energy Center LLC, application number MR2118F. This application was accepted on July 10th, 2023, with a waiver letter from the applicant to review the project beyond the required 60-day, consistent with the adopted 2018 uniform standards. The application is for the installation of 23,280 solar panels on 2 capped mounds at the former landfill. Given the sensitive nature of the site, the area of disturbance will be limited to approximately 47.56 acres of a larger 321.21 acre site. Next slide. The project area is located in Council District 4, Planning Area 71A, and in the city of Bowie. Next slide. The project, 2 mounds are highlighted in red, and they are bordered to the west by Public Works Road, south by Maryland 450, Maryland 3, and to the east by the Patuxent River and Arundel County border. Next slide, please. The current zoning is agricultural preservation. Next slide. And the previous zoning was, if the project was in the OS zone. Next slide. The aerial site shows the 2 mounds highlighted in red. Next slide. The project area is heavily wooded and contains streams and wetlands. The 2 capped mounds are covered with sparse vegetation on approximately 2 feet of soil. Patuxent River runs to the east of the site. According to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the area surrounding the 2 mounds are within a 100-year floodplain. Next slide. Maryland 450 is designated as an arterial road. Maryland 3, which is Grand Highway, is a freeway. Public Works Road is a private road used by the city of Bowie, Public Works Department for its wastewater treatment facility. Next slide, please. The circulation plan, okay. The circulation plan is not as bright as I would have expected, but this is the best the applicant could provide to us. I will just go over it a little bit. Access road is from Public Works Road, which is a private road maintained by the city of Bowie. The access road will be connected with the gravel roads to the site and connected to both mounds, east and west. It's like a stem, like a U. Each one of the gravel road connects to the east mound, and one of them connects to the west. But the main access will be from Public Works Road. Given the sensitive nature and area of the site, these are the only access to the area for maintenance during the construction. And I just want to say that the site plan, the applicant indicates that because of the sensitive nature of the mounds, which are capped, the project will be in 2 phases to make sure every one of the phase development is inspected by the state and to make sure the mounds are protected, given the thin layer of soil that is on the site. Next slide. This shows as I indicated before, the east side of the project area, Patuxent River runs. This is the upstream showing the Patuxent River. Next slide. The downstream of the Patuxent River, which runs east of the project area. Next slide. Existing view from Public Works Road and Maryland 450 looking into the site, which is heavily wooded, as I mentioned before. Next slide. Another view from Maryland 450 and 301 also shows a heavy wooded nature of the site, which will not be viewed. The solar arrays will not be viewed by the public. Next slide. This is the site plan that shows the layout of the 2,328 solar arrays. And you can see the connection of the stem, which is from Public Works Road, which is a gravel road that leads to both mounds. Each one of the gravel road leading to each one of the site, which is one on the east and one on the west. Next slide. This is a new slide that I inserted after the plan board packet was released, just to provide clarity and some background history of the nature of the installation of the solar arrays at the 2 mounds, because the area is very delicate. A new type of installation is different from the one that a normal solar normally drill to the ground. So this is highlighting the area being, even though it's a brownfield, it has environmental concerns. That shows that unknown waste, hazardous waste has been placed on the site. The details of this is shown on page 4 and 5 of the staff report. Given the history that for over a long period of time, hazardous waste was dumped into the site when they didn't have a permit. And even though environmental remediation was never taken place, soil has been placed to cover the mound and is being capped. And the site is also listed, identified as potential hazardous areas in the state of Maryland. And they monitor the site periodically by EPA. And because of that, the Ballard ground system is what is approved to be used to install the 23,280 solar panels on the 2 mounds based on the sensitivity. And all of this have to be monitored by the state of Maryland. Next slide. This is the example of the baluster mounted solar array. You can see that the cement blocks are the one that are used for the brackets of the panel to be installed on it, avoiding the depth, breaching the depth of the cap landfill. Next slide. The site features shows exactly that the area to be disturbed is limited, and limited just to the 2 mounds, not the larger area, and it's very confined to specific areas on the mound to avoid any area of damages to the cap mound. The access road, which is I discussed earlier, is the only access to the site, and there's gravel roads connecting to both of the 2 mounds. The electric switch gear, which will connecting electricity grid from BGE to the site, that location is at the entrance, adjacent to Public Works Road, again, based on the sensitive nature of the terrain, which is on the 2 cap mounts. And the rows of the array are also replaced on the cap mounts with a high level of sensitivity, and as well as a security fence will be installed. There will be no pedestrian access to the site, and personnel to the site will be visited as needed. Next slide. Stakeholder engagement, staff mailed notices to adjoining properties owner confronting and abutting owners on September 5th, and the applicant did as well, beginning on August 1st, 2022, and continued and had discussions with the city of Bowie, which up till the staff report was written, there were no inquiries in opposition to this application. Next slide. Given the nature of the project area, there are a number of steps that will be taken after the planning board, the process today. Other agents will be involved in reviewing the site as outlined on this slide. And of course, the state of Maryland, MDE, will be directly involved in the design and in construction of the solar array on the two cap mounts, given the sensitive nature of the area. Next slide. We have 4 recommendations. Again, the top one being that the applicant should work with the state for the final design and construction of the arrays. As noted earlier, it will be phased in design and development because of the sensitive nature of the location of the mounts and the solar array being placed on approximately 2 feet of soil, which was placed on the cap mount. So it's a systematic process, which we're encouraging the applicant to make sure they work with the state and not that to make sure the area is protected. And the applicant should work with Prince George's County EMS to ensure design of construction access. The access road from Public Works Road is the only access to the site. And because the area into the site itself is very sensitive, we're asking the applicant to work with fire EMS to make sure they agree on the width of the access to the site in case emergency vehicles are required to enter the site for fire or emergency. And again, we're asking for an incident plan to be developed with fire. And the fourth one being herbaceous cover. It's a little bit tricky site, given the thin layer of soil that exists on the side on the cap mound. It's something the applicant would have to work with to see what can be implemented in terms of putting any plantings on the area. This is recommended to protect any erosion on the 2 feet of soil that is capped on this very sensitive area of the 2 mounds. This concludes staff presentation, and I request the board to approve the recommendations and transmit the package to the planning board, and to the applicant, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osei. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Osei or other staff members?
I have one question, Mr. Chair. So, Ms. Osei, am I reading this that minimum height is 12 feet? So that the panels will be up at least, well, a minimum of 12 feet. So what does that do with the surrounding neighborhood, or what's the visibility from any of the streets?
Kenny, can you go to one of the slides? Let's see the tree cover and the environmental features. Yeah, this. Oh, okay, if you can stay on that one, please.
I think you want to go back a slide, Kenny.
The environmental features slide.
One more back.
Yeah. Yes. The 2 mounts where the installation will take place, I highlighted in purple. Outside of those 2 mounts which is the 47.28 acres, which is a disturbed area. Outside of that is a larger 321.21 acre site, which is all wooded.
Okay.
So you're looking at the 2 mounts being inside the overall larger acre being wooded. So the visibility from adjoining neighborhood, which is south of Public Works Road, is a little bit off away. If you look at the tree line and what's shown here, the larger side is heavily wooded. And so that's the response that staff, from reviewing the application, really, you will not be able to see them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? No other questions. We have no one who signed up to speak on this. I do see on my list that we have some folks who I assume are from the applicant's team who are here. I'm not requiring or even requesting folks to speak. I just want to make sure there's an opportunity if you're planning to.
Mr. Chairman, I did work with the applicant to sign up, and I worked with Callista to confirm that they did sign up on a Friday before Monday. And Callista emailed me to confirm that, yes, the applicant signed up. They were waiting for a link to be sent to them to join the presentation. So I'm not sure why they're not on the list. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I'm not particularly concerned about it.
Okay.
This is a mandatory referendum, so I say that.
Okay.
So commissioners, if there's no further questions, then if there's no discussion, then I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff and approve the transmittal of MR-2118F and transmit to the applicant, Mr. Brian Quinlan.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussions? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Osei. Next item on our agenda is item 8. This is another solar array, Countywide Planning Division MR 2022-013 NCS New Covenant Community Solar Project. We have Ms. Walker who will give the staff presentation. And I don't think we have anyone from the applicant's team. We'll see when we get to that. Ms. Walker, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, this is Tania Walker with the Special Projects section. This mentor referral review is MRF-2022-013 for NCS New Covenant Solar. This proposal was reviewed per Land Use Article Section 20-301 through 305 of the Maryland Annotated Code for Mandatory Referrals. This application proposes the construction of a roof-mounted solar panels on an existing church building, a carport with solar panels over an existing parking lot, and a ground-mounted solar energy system on approximately 1.66 acres of a 4.75 acre site. Next slide, please. The project is in Council District 5 and Planning Area 68 in the Established Community Growth Policy Area. Next slide, please. The 4.75 acre site is located on land owned by New Covenant Church. The site is bounded by Lawrence Street to the north, Comar Manor Park to the south, by 38th Avenue and Comar Manor Park to the east, and the Town Council of Comar Manor and Fort Lincoln Cemetery to the west. There is an existing shared roadway on the western side of the property. Next slide, please. This site is zone RSF-65, residential single family 65. Next slide, please. The site is also within the IDO, Chesapeake Critical Bay Area Intense Development Overlay Zone. Next slide, please. The aerial view of the site shows the existing church, parking lot, and athletic field. Next slide, please. The site is in the 8-digit Lower Anacostia watershed. The site's topography varies in elevation. Next slide, please. This site is located to the south of Lawrence Street. Next slide, please. The proposed project includes a 1 megawatt solar array consisting of rooftop and carport solar panels as well as ground-mounted solar panels to include approximately 51 solar tables with 24 panels per table, and a fixed farm lot security fence that will be no higher than 7 feet. Next slide, please. The site plan shows where the existing panels will be installed on the existing building, the carport panels over the existing parking lot, and the ground-mounted layout of the solar panels to the south of the parking lot. Next slide, please. The landscape plan shows the proposed buffer and planting surrounding the property. Next slide, please. The applicant sent notification to adjoining property owners as well as civic associations and municipalities on December the 6th, 2022, and also addressed concerns from the town of Comar Manor via email on August 1st, 2023. Next slide, please. The staff recommendations are listed here. The applicant must coordinate with DPI for compliance with stormwater regulations. The applicant should consult with the town of Comar Manor regarding construction access on the shared road. Prior to the issuance of a use and occupancy permit, the applicant and the applicant's heirs, successors, or assignees should contact the Prince George's County Fire EMS Department to request a pre-incident emergency plan for the facility. Additionally, the Critical Area Commission of the Department of Natural Resources reviewed the project for location in the CBCA. It was determined that there was no impact on secondary buffers. In a letter to the environmental planning staff dated July 11th, 2023, Critical Area Commission staff asked for a submittal of a planting plan, noted that the stormwater management plan requires a Department of the Environment approval, and a decommissioning plan is required. This concludes staff presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Commissioners, questions for staff before we turn to the applicant? I've got one question. I just want to understand, you said you were recommending the herbaceous cover. Maybe I'm missing it. I thought most of the panels were solar carport panels and rooftop. So how many of the panels are neither? How many of them are going to be mounted in ground that can allow for herbaceous cover? Or did I misunderstand?
So no, there are ground-mounted panels. There are 51 solar tables that will have 24 panels per table.
And that's separate from the rooftop solar and separate from the carport solar?
Correct.
Okay, all right, now I understand. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I have one
question,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Commissioner Geraldo?
Yeah. So you say the maximum height of the fence is 7 feet. So my question is there a minimum for security? You know what I mean?
The Solar Energy Guidelines recommends a 7-foot fence. And so that's what the applicant is proposing.
Oh, okay. As long as that's, okay. I heard you say that, never mind. I just wanted to make sure that it didn't put up a 2-foot fence. That's all.
No, I'm sorry if I confused you. It'll be a 7-foot fence.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? No other questions. We'll turn to the applicant. Mr. Taub, I assume you're representing the applicant, the team?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Larry Taub with O'Malley, Miles, Nellen, and Gilmore. Yes, I'm here this morning representing New Columbia Solar, the parent company of NCS New Covenant in this particular case. I want to thank Ms. Walker for her work on this, her presentation. I'm pleased to indicate that my client does concur with the staff recommendation and all proposed conditions, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions from Mr. Taub? Reverend Addison, can you pop on so we can give you a wave? That's it. Just wanted to do that. There we go. Commissioners, there's no questions for the applicant, and there's no further questions for staff. Then I believe and there's no one else who decided to speak. I believe we can conclude our business, and I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff and approve the transmittal of MRF-2022-013 and transmit to the applicant NCS New Covenant LLC.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
But I'll just mention, I look forward to seeing this installation in place because I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to look with kind of a mix of everything. And I go over to the community park down there to hike around in the woods, and we have a Dueling Creek down there, which is a lot of historical value, and it's got awesome views of the Potomac River and kind of like, I guess, the offshoot of the rivers right across from our Bladensburg waterfront. So I'll definitely look forward to seeing it in place in the not too distant future.
Thank you. Thank you for those words. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Mr. Tao.
Thank you very much.
Reverend Addison, other members of the team, New Columbia Solar, thank you all very much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your help.
And our final item on our agenda, this is item 9, the regular agenda item. This is Community Planning Division. This is the initiation of once again, of the Port Towns. Initiation of the Port Towns Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment. We have Ms. Selva Kumar, if I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I apologize, who will be giving the staff presentation. And let me turn it over to you. Wait, can't hear you. No, sorry. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you. No, not yet. I know it's frustrating, but take your time. And if you feel the need, you can blame Mr. Hunt. That's fine with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Josephine, check your settings real quick to ensure that you're using your audio devices for your headset.
We can certainly take a second. We're in no rush, Mr. Hunt. So, and if need be, she can certainly use the call-in number.
Hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Now turn your video on too. There we go. Try
Can
your
you
audio
see and
again.
hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, something with the setting. I'm glad it's working now. And you did get my last name right. It's Selva Kumar. Thank you. Okay.
So take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll wait for the slides to come up. Okay, there it is. But I see it black and white, not in color.
I think as I'm looking at them, they've been uploaded in black and white. Oddly enough. Well, Ms. Selva Kumar will use our imagination.
Okay. Okay. It's a very colorful town, but that's okay. I'll go with what's presented here. Okay. Good morning, Chair Shapiro and members of the board. For the record, I'm Josephine Selvakumar, Project Manager for the Port Towns Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment. I'm joined today by Sarah Benton, Project Facilitator and Long Range Planning Supervisor. This is item number 9, and the purpose of this agenda item is approval to request District Council initiate a sector plan and concurrent sectional map amendment for the Port Towns, approval of a 9-month extension to prepare the same, and approval to transmit the goals, concepts, guidelines, and public participation program, and request for extension to the District Council. Next slide, please. And now I'll provide a brief overview of the sector plan area and a general approach to developing the plan. The Port Towns sector plan area is approximately 1,935 acres. The sector plan area generally comprises properties contained within the municipal boundaries of Bladensburg, Colma Manor, Cottage City, and Edmundston, all located within Sub-Region 2 and Council District 5. The towns of Cottage City, Colma Manor, and Edmundston are in Planning Area 68, and the town of Bladensburg is in Planning Area 69. The project will cover areas within the Plan 2035's established communities, areas, and neighborhood centers. The sector plan area includes major transportation routes and commercial corridors that impact the visual character and economic viability of these inner ring suburban communities. Bladensburg Road is a gateway to Prince George's County from the District of Columbia, as well as a major commercial thoroughfare for the Port Town communities. The US Route 1, Baltimore Avenue, and the Maryland 201, Kenilworth Avenue are both prime routes for truck traffic and important commercial corridors. The sector plan area is largely residential, but it also contains a mix of other uses, including several shopping centers, employment areas, and portions of northeast and northwest branches of Anacostia River. Next slide, please. Our objective is to produce a draft sector plan and proposed sectional map amendment through an inclusive participation process by February 2025. And some of our major goals include identify and analyze existing conditions, develop a new and realistic vision and goals for the area in collaboration with the community, provide policies and strategies for implementation, and advance Plan 2035. Next slide, please. Now, to further understand the sector plan's overarching purpose, here are some of the key questions identified by the project team. This is not just a comprehensive list of questions, and this can also be found in goals, concept guidelines documents, and this also outlines how we will begin to answer them. So the questions include, are there opportunities to develop amenity-rich, connected, and high-quality places for residents, workers, and visitors at the existing local centers? Does the potential exist to increase area employment opportunities? How can Prince George's County and partner agencies improve transportation connectivity and identify targeted opportunities to increase accessibility to non-automotive travel modes? How can Prince George's County attract development that provides housing opportunities for all while simultaneously protecting established communities? Are there opportunities to protect, preserve, and enhance elements of county's green infrastructure? Next slide, please. How can changes in future land use and zoning support existing commercial development and spur investment and development without business displacement? What actions should be taken to preserve and capitalize on the area's history and culture? How can we create a sense of place for the Port Town communities? How can vehicular and pedestrian connections to the waterfront area be improved, addressing the barriers created by Kenilworth Avenue Freeway and CSX Railroad Bridge between the 46th and 47th Street? And how can the waterfront be utilized as an asset that drives development potential? Is there an opportunity for a niche market to be developed for this diverse community? Next slide, please. Community engagement and input is a major focus for the project team, and we recognize that some community members participated in the previous studies, reports, and plans for the area, and we will build up the wealth of knowledge from the prior efforts and provide updated recommendations where appropriate. The public participation program will be implemented by the community planning, working in collaboration with the public and private agencies and a consultant team. We will engage the community through a transparent and inclusive process while identifying and engaging those that never have been participated. Other ways we'll engage the community include making all efforts to meet the people where they are, especially in their communities and in the community events. Staff recognize a high percentage of residents living within the proposed sector plan boundary are Hispanic. There will be Spanish language translation, interpretation, and engagement services throughout the planning process to help ensure participation of that population within the plan area. Engagement materials will all be in Spanish and in English. And we will build interactive, accessible, and safe input mechanisms and provide ongoing and open communication. Ultimately, we want to inform, consult, involve, listen, and collaborate and empower the community to the best of our ability and in cooperation with identifying the community partners. As you can see there, there is a link that is provided here for you to watch at your convenience. And this link will take to our interviews with the community members at the Bladensburg International Festival, one of the community events in the past months. Next slide, please. Here is a summary of the project schedule. We are here trying to get the planning board initiation and anticipating to initiate by the district council by October 17th. By late fall, early winter, we will complete the existing conditions and publish it on an interactive and accessible online story map. The project team has been involved in the existing conditions analysis since fall 2022. And we will begin to implement the public participation program this fall through summer of 2024. And the drafting of the plan will then begin with the public release occurring in February 2025. And then we move to the legislative approval phase with the joint public hearing in May of 2025 and the planning board action in July of 2025 and the district council action in November 2025, unless a joint public hearing is required, which will push the council action to February 2026. Next slide, please. I think it's a delay on my end. I'm not able to see the next slide.
Take your time.
Are you able to see the next slide? I'm not.
We do. It says next steps.
Okay, next steps. Yeah, I can see it now. Our current next steps, of course, includes your approval to request the district council to initiate the sector plan and the sectional map amendment and their approval of the goals, concept guidelines, and the public participation program. Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation, and planning staff recommends approval to request district council to initiate a sector plan and concurrent sectional map amendment for the port towns, approval of a 9-month extension to prepare the same, and approval to transmit goals, concepts, guidelines, and public participation program, and request for extension to the district council. Thank you, Chair Shapiro and members of the board for your time and attention, and we will now take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Silvercomore. Questions for staff, commissioners?
Yeah, can we go to the slide that's on, was earlier on the key questions, the first key question slide? Yeah, so I wanted to make a suggestion on here because I'm really familiar with this area. Even though I misspoken to the Potomac River and it's Anacostia in the last case, we're just thinking of the offshoot and for whatever reason slipped. What I wanted to suggest is that we need to be careful with that third bullet in terms of how we frame this community and this area. Because I wouldn't say increase accessibility to non-automotive travel modes, although you probably can guess I'm extremely supportive of the concept. I would say safety, not accessibility. Some of the sidewalks are okay around there, but we have tons of accessibility to non-car travel in that area. It is car-centric when you're going into DC and passing by exactly these spots. I guess not the community garden, but the other two images in there. It's extremely kind of car-focused, and it's not really safe to be walking on the sidewalks there. And it's just not inviting. It's not appealing. It's not urbanized. Like everything is set back. The parking lots there are rather like unutilized, and there's a lot of kind of activated or potentially activated space that you could probably figure out. But there are tons of trails. There's sidewalks around there. There's lots of infrastructure even on that main quarter, and then nearby with the parks and everything that's around there. The Bladensburg waterfront, the trail system is incredible. It connects all around there. So if you want to get to some place, it's not a straight shot necessarily, but if you want to get somewhere from that area, you definitely get around on the trails. And there's good playgrounds. There's lots of good spots to enjoy the area. But what we need to figure out is we need to figure out in their wayfinding and just advertising how people get around, because that is completely lost. If you go to the Bladensburg waterfront area and you're coming off the trail, there's no way to know what you're coming into when you're coming from DC. And earlier you had said that the Bladensburg waterfront or the Bladensburg road, is the gateway to DC. That's not my impression, although I use it when I'm driving into DC. Sometimes instead of going off the highway, what I would have framed it as is that there are multiple kind of ways to get into DC from that area, and that area is the gateway in various modes of transit. Because that bike trail goes right down into DC right now. You can bike all the way in, and you can come up from DC. And what I've noticed recently is that, and I mentioned it to our commissioners not too long ago, is that I've encountered a number of people on the trails around there who don't have a clue how, when they're coming up from DC, what they're getting into and how to find places. Because there's no signs. There's no advertisements to any of this stuff. So if we want to support the communities around there, and we want people to jump up and have a bite to eat at like the Latin American restaurants that are just off the trail right there, we need to have signs or ways that people know that they can get there, because it's not obvious. And when you're on the trails right there, it's not obvious like what trails go to what direction. Like when you're coming off of the waterfront, you're going up the trails, you can turn left and go over to Route 1, or you can turn right and you can go up the creek on the northeast branch and explore lots of other stuff there. There's no way to know what's where or how to get places unless you're using Google Maps on your phone and you're looking at that as you're coming across the fork, which isn't probably a great idea as you're biking. So I really want us to figure out how do we create a synergy for the different modes of transit in there and sort of activate those the businesses by steering people in different directions and just giving them easy ways to figure out like how do they get over to different places that they might want to go to. And have like wayfinding is going to be extremely important in that, having signs or different directions on that. If you're walking down the sidewalks in this area, like right where in that picture, there's no way to know that the Bladensburg waterfront is up ahead, that we have the Peace Cross Monument and memorial like straight up ahead, and that's super famous because it was in a Supreme Court case for the entire country. There just aren't ways of kind of knowing those things. And yeah, there's two of those pictures are right next to each other. They're within like a stone's throw to get to the Anacostia Society building right there on the top right, and the memorial that we have right there on the left. But you can't even walk between those very easily either without getting clipped by cars and stuff. So just having ways of kind of promoting safety and encouraging the businesses, I think, is going to be extremely important as we're going through and picking up this sector plan and kind of coming up with a map and figuring out how do we actually do that. And that to me is just something that it's missing in this area. And this area is incredible. Like there's so much to do around there. And you don't need a car necessarily to get around. So it pains me to hear like references to the automobile, because we should really be promoting non-automobile transit in that area and encouraging the residents to look around and see what they can do in that area, because they already do. But if you go on those trails, like it's not obvious how to get to places. If you're across from the waterfront, across from that bridge that's in another picture, and looking at the waterfront, I have no idea that the Colmar Manor Park is right there and I can get into it in the back way, or that I can go up this where there's like a trail ends just like right up there. And there's this sort of side trail that leads into the Port Town kind of area. But if you're not looking at Google Maps, it's unclear like what goes down that way. And if people want to go in there and explore stuff, they should, and it should be easy for people to kind of figure that out and to go back and forth. Because there's lots of ways to connect these areas if we just kind of do it a little more intentionally and kind of get the guideposts for that. But yeah, I think it's a great thing to focus on. We just need to kind of help the area a little bit more, and then it'll be incredible.
Thank you so much. It looks like you pretty much gave a snapshot of our existing conditions. I totally agree with all that you said. It is in a great location, and we have heard this from the community and talking to the town managers and the mayors that creating a sense of place, wayfinding, branding are the things that the town is lacking right now. And they do have all these trail facilities, and they do have a lot of history, but then you want to know when you're there that there are community gardens there and parks here and how the trails are connected. So yes, I agree with all that you said. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and think about it as a crossing for multiple places, not just to get to DC, but you can go south into DC or either by road or by trail. You can also go west from here to get over to Silver Spring and Montgomery County. You can go north to get to College Park and a bunch of other stuff up there in UMD. So this is kind of like a crossing for lots of different things. And so let's not be just DC focused, but also promote places in our county as well as in our neighboring county, since we're connected via the commission.
Well said.
If I might.
And Sarah, you want to go? Ms. Benton?
I just wanted to add one quick thing. We did not include the exhaustive list of questions from the goals, concepts, and guidelines. So there, if you do reference page 6 in your goals, concepts, and guidelines, we do have some of those questions in there addressing pedestrian safety, visibility of different sites, and that kind of touch on the concepts that you've mentioned. Thank you.
That's great. And let me say, I just want to associate myself with so much of what Commissioner Dorner said. So one suggestion that I have, and I think the answer is you already do it, but I'm wondering if there's a way to enhance it even more. This one feels like could be the poster child for a much more robust internal partnership with our Department of Parks and Recreation. Because so much of what's going on here is oriented around our own land. And I really agree with the issues around the placemaking and the wayfinding. I mean, pardon me, but I used to represent this area on the county council, and I was having these discussions 25 years ago, and they didn't go anywhere. And so I just feel like one of the real opportunities is to build off the assets that we have, just like you're talking about. But I think that means us, you all, approaching this in a slightly different way. So for me, a partnership with DPR, a real partnership with DPR on that, and I'm telling you, I don't know what that means. It just needs to happen. And also Experience Prince George's, our Conference of Visitors Bureau, to really enhance that partnership, get them involved early, have them take more of a leadership role in what we're doing. And then the last one would be the Anacostia Trails Heritage Area, which is a significant player in this area. as well. So if we could think of this, if we could imagine, and I think you'll love it, right? But if you can imagine taking this up in more of a partnership way and innovate around that, you have, I believe, all of our blessing and endorsement.
Thank you, Shapiro. We've been working with the Department of Parks and Rec with our background research and existing conditions, and they have been like a really valuable resource team members. And we have had extensive discussion with the Department of Parks, and they, especially with Rob, and they've given us all the information on the efforts the towns have put in all these parks and trail system and how the department is working with them. So we'll make sure to collaborate with them as we move along the process.
Right, and I think two things, and I'm going to keep stems a bit, because when we're out there in the community and you're going through the community engagement process, to have DPR sitting next to you every step of the way is really going to send a message about what the priority is here.
Okay, sure. In fact, we are going to attend community meetings this weekend, tomorrow and Saturday, which the DPR is hosting for Senior Day and the Heritage Festival. Yeah.
Anacostia River Festival will be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be there. Yeah.
And I just think it sends the right message, but you also get the right information. They're also, as I know you know, they're right in the midst of a major wayfinding and signage effort along the trails right through this area. And so that just needs to get built right into whatever whatever the sector plan proposes needs to be building up what they're already doing with that. But I imagine you've already had some of those conversations.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Chair Shapiro. I'm a little disappointed I couldn't see the colorful PowerPoints that we put together.
I want to make one other suggestion, because the bridge was just a second ago in one of the images. And just to give you an idea of something that might activate this area, get people interested in it. We've done art around this kind of vicinity of this local area. And that really brings people in. There's like a polka dot park that was done in Hyattsville. People would come and take pictures on like Instagram and TikTok and all sorts of other stuff. There's up in the Riverdale kind of area where you've got Whole Foods and all the development up there. Against one of the buildings up there across from a parking lot kind of area in the backside are just some like angel wings. Or it's either angel or butterfly. I forget which one it is. I should know because I have a picture of my daughter. Standing in front of the smaller one and then the bigger ones as well. Those get people to I see them all the time going and taking pictures and just, that's a destination because of the art. That bridge that's there though is like really sad. It just looks old. And I was looking at it because I was fishing down there with my son a couple weeks ago and I was just kind of looking at the bridge. I'm like, it'd be just so nice if we could have like a paint color on there or something. And I don't know if it would be bad environmentally or distracting to have like all the colors, but if that was like a colorful bridge or something, and then as you're going across the bridge onto the trails, there's just a lot of asphalt, just concrete, where our trail system kind of ends that I was talking about earlier. You could paint that like hopscotch or like some sort of like zigzaggedy thing that could follow or whatever. You can make it just really fun. And that might be a way to get people to use that and to like activate kind of that area and then see the parks and the waterfront kind of area. Because I see people at the playground and around there and the host events at the picnic area quite frequently. We've got the rowing teams and stuff. But if you have like a bridge that just looked really cool, like you would get people going there just to take pictures on the bridge and just to see the bridge. And that would all of a sudden become a destination. Potentially as you're coming out of DC, people want to take a little bit longer ride to come up to our waterfront just so they can take a picture at that bridge. And do that. If we had something like that, that could just be one way of kind of kicking off some of the stuff that might be sort of low-hanging fruit. So I'd encourage you to check out that. And then think about, as you're doing it, putting also in like bike parking around there, like having places that we can have, that people can lock up their bikes and stuff like next to the bridge, because you don't have that right now. And I've sat on the grass across the way from there and just kind of left my bike there. And gone down with my kids and just kind of played on the hillside. But there's nowhere to like lock up a bike on the other side. And there are plenty of people who come with the bikes, and that could become like just a nice sort of little picnic area and stuff that people would want to see. Because the water is awesome. We're doing great jobs. Like our parks folks have cleaned up the water there. It's close to being like swimmable, although I'm not going to be jumping in quite yet. But there's all sorts of like restoration of the natural environments. We have boat tours that go out of the waterfront. There's lots of ways of kind of getting people there and experiencing that, and then spilling over into the nearby community to grab food, to grab whatever they might need, like the supermarket and other places. There's lots of stuff in that Port Town area that they can then potentially use. So that's just one suggestion on how to maybe like kind of kick off stuff that I would think about.
Thank you.
So, let me just say good luck to you, because you can see the kind of energy we have around this. So we're going to be paying a lot of attention to it. Real excited about the work that you're doing. Huge potential. Dare I say, I hope you enjoy this process, because I think it has the potential to be both exciting and transformative.
It is an exciting project, and we are looking forward to see that we come up with the recommendations that it's implementable, because the area has a lot of potential. Yeah.
Exactly. Good. Okay. All right. If there's no further questions, commissioners, then I would look for a motion. A very long motion, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendation of staff and transmit a request to the district council to initiate the preparation of a sector plan and concurrent sectional map amendment for the Port Towns area, in addition to approving the recommended goals, concepts, guidelines, and public participation, as well as approving a 9-month extension of the timeframe for preparing the draft Port Towns sector plan.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Dorner. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington?
Aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Definitely aye.
Commissioner Giraldo?
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Selvakumar. Thank you, Ms. Benton. Thanks to the rest of the team. We're excited to hear how this progresses. I believe that is all we have before us. Mr. Hunt, any further business to come before the planning board today?
There are no additional business items before the board today. Thank you.
Thank you. Then with that, commissioners, without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for your time.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you, sir.